everybody, to the Play Action Podcast. We've got myself, we've got Matt. And if you didn't know, this is a rebranded show. We've been doing the show consistently. It's just been on another platform. We're bringing it back over to the original location of our show. You know, it's been called a lot of things, the Worst Take Podcast. It's been called the Football Diary. Now it's the Play Action Podcast. And that's going to stick, because we finally found a name that I think we really like. But overall, we're trying to do 2 live shows a week. We're going to be doing our first live show under the rebrand tomorrow, which is Thursday. And then we are also going to be putting out a bunch of daily content talking about different segments. We're going to have a focus on current NFL, but there may be some talk on fantasy football. There may be some talk on college football as well. So, we're super excited to do that. Welcome, everybody. If you haven't seen our faces in a little bit, but let's talk about another team, Matt, that both of us were pretty high. You were more high. You were higher on their overall roster coming into the year. We just had questions about the quarterback and whether or not he would be able to, prove that he is the consistent player that he needs to be to have a lot of success. And Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles so far through 2 weeks are looking explosive. They're looking dynamic, and they're looking like, I'm going to say, a true contender in the NFC, even though the NFC may not be as, star-studded and dominant, in terms of overall teams as the AFC. The Eagles are looking like, wow, you can't sleep on them, because they were a perennial playoff team over the last few years. But it's like, oh, sweet, we play the Eagles in the first round. I don't think it's going to be the case anymore, because they've brought in A.J. Brown. Their defensive line, ridiculous. And Darius Slay looks like he's back to big play Slay. What do you think about this Eagles roster? How good are they?
Dude, I think this team is really, really good. And before the year started, we actually had talked about, okay, let's look at this roster. We kind of did some roster overview stuff, and I don't think it was on air, but I told you, I said, dude, I think this, like, as kind of like a hot take or whatever, I think this might be the best roster in football if you take away the value of quarterback, because obviously the Bills are probably going to beat you out because the Bills are stacked and the Bills have Josh Allen. But if you're not talking quarterback and you're looking at this team, you're going, okay, what's the weakness? I guess linebacker, where they got a steal in Nakobe Dean and they signed Kaiser White, but it's like, is it really that bad? No. Is it going to hurt them? I don't think so. You start looking at it, you're like, okay, they trade for Gardner Johnson. They have Darius Slay. They have James. Like, they have their DBs are pretty good. I haven't talked about the D-line. The D-line is the deepest D-line in the entire sport, and they have a bunch of playmakers there. Offensive line, same deal. Like, in the trenches, they are potentially the best on both sides of the football. That is absurd for a team to be that good in both those areas. A.J. Brown, that trade, I mean, look at both the teams where they're at right now. We talked about the Jags in the AFC South yesterday, and the Jags are a team that could potentially be better than the Titans, who were the number 1 seed in the AFC, because the Titans look awful. And then you look at the effect that A.J. Brown has had on this offense. In the opening game where the Eagles beat the Lions, Devontae Smith didn't have any catches, but A.J. Brown was going insane. Against the Vikings, I believe Devontae had 7 catches, I want to say, on like 7 targets, I'm pretty sure. Like, he ended up having a pretty good game. So the receiving core is now all of a sudden a strength. Like, the O-line is so good. The running back room is good. Like, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, like, I think people kind of are like, oh, that's not good. Miles Sanders isn't that good. Miles Sanders just hasn't been healthy. If he's on the field, he's been playing pretty well. And this year, he's off to a pretty hot start. So then it leaves you to quarterback. And Jalen Hurts is so much better than he was as a rookie a couple years back. He looks like the game is a little, like, slowed down a little bit. He had a deep shot last night to Quez Watkins, or 2 nights ago to Quez Watkins. And he's a quarterback that, look, he's not going to ever be a top 5 or like a tier 1 quarterback, right? But he's definitely serviceable. He is one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. If you remember, he was a guy that was, this was okay, I guess number 2, yeah. But he was a guy, like, they talked about, like, him being a running back prospect, not to be like, oh, this guy's not a quarterback, he's a running back, but to highlight how good of a runner he was and how his frame is actually good enough to potentially play running back in the NFL. It wasn't meant to be like, oh, we're knocking this guy, he's not a quarterback. It was
different
like,
from Lamar.
Yeah, different from how they talk about Lamar. I mean, in some ways the same too, but like, it's just something where it's like, dude, like, he's a real dual threat quarterback. He takes a while to get the ball out. He doesn't have great arm strength. But having AJ Brown run slants and RPOs across the middle, dude, it's so dirty. We saw it last night. They ran an RPO and the linebacker stepped up. And this is Eric Kendricks. This is, an elite linebacker, a vet linebacker that's been in the league for a long time. And they get them in weird spots and they just hit AJ Brown across the middle. And then he goes and picks up 20 yards and gets a bunch of a yak. Like, their offense is super good. They're going to score a lot of points. We've already seen that. And we started to see some flashes of that last year, but they didn't have AJ Brown. Like, they didn't have the offense. I haven't even talked about Dallas Goedert. He's one of the most underrated tight ends in the game. Like, their team is just so good top to bottom. And they win in so many different ways where there's going to be matchups this year where they may have the advantage in every single department against another team, which is not something you see that much in football because it's like, oh yeah, this team's super elite, but their O-line isn't that good, or their linebackers really suck, or they don't have receive. Like, there's always something that a team doesn't have,
They
right?
may have that against every team in their division outside of running back with Saquon Barkley.
And Saquon Barkley gets hurt all the time too.
like their team is unbelievable and their roster. And the scariest part is that division. You look at how did Tom Brady have all that success when he had his dynasty in New England? He got to play the Jets twice a year. He got to play the Dolphins twice a year, and he got to play the Bills twice a year. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, I'm not saying it's going to be a dynasty, but this season, they're playing the Cowboys without Dak. And they may get to play the Cowboys with Dak once, but Dak looked horrible week 1. So it wasn't like something where it's like, oh, Dak's coming back. He's insane. It's like, dude, Dak looked really bad before he got hurt. They play the Commanders this week, and they play them again. Then they get to play the Giants twice. And the Giants, they're improved, but this was consistently over the last 3-4 years. Everyone talks about this is the worst division we've ever seen. I mean, there was a year where Giants fans were mad at Eagles fans because they didn't win to make the playoffs at 6 wins. They would have had 6 wins on the year. And they were like, if the Eagles had done that, we would be in the playoffs. Like, dude, if you have 6 wins, you cannot be upset about not making the playoffs. So overall, this has been a horrible division. And now all of a sudden, it looks like a team has finally taken the reins on it. And they are going to be able to consistently win because this is not Dak's hurt this year, so they're going to be able to win. It's like, no, the roster top to bottom is unbelievable. And they're going to lose some defensive line depth next year. But that's why you draft a guy like Jordan Davis to be able to fill in that. Their backup D-line, we've talked about it, Matt. They could be starting off defensive lines and be good for other teams in the NFL. So overall, this roster is going to be very good. And they could end up winning the NFC because of the schedule that they end up playing, because they get to play, some of these weaker teams. And I'm pulling up their schedule right now, and until week 10. This is through week 10. This is their schedule through week 10. The Washington Commanders, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Arizona Cardinals, the Dallas Cowboys bye week, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Houston Texans, then the Washington Commanders again.
They could win every single one of those games.
They could be undefeated through week 10. And you know who they play in week 11? The Colts. Then they play the Packers.
Dude,
it's like, okay, the Packers could be good.
That means that last night is their hardest matchup in the first 10 weeks of the season.
First 11.
Maybe you could say the 11. Steelers. Maybe if the Steelers kind of figured out TJ Watt's back and stuff, like maybe then.
No, it keeps going, Matt. It keeps going. They play the Packers in week 12. They could be good. They play the Titans week 13. The Titans look terrible. They play the Giants week 14, the Bears week 15, the Cowboys week 16, the Saints week 17, and the Giants week 18.
Dude, they could be.
That is the easiest schedule I've ever seen.
They could easily be the 1 seed.
This is not to be like, oh, they're not going to actually be that good. They've played an easy schedule because a lot of times when teams have really good records, they're like, oh, well, their schedule has been terrible. This is a very good football team, and they're benefited by a bad schedule. Like, I think they are on the same level as now. It comes down, Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady, but they're on the same tier, I think, as the Rams and as the Buccaneers when it comes to playing. Now, who do I trust more in the playoffs? I trust Tom Brady, but in terms of overall roster, this is a scary team, and you do not want to have to go into Philly, which I think teams are going to have to do to get to the Super Bowl. That's scary.
So I like that you bring that up. So last year I went to the Niners-Eagles game. I think it was week 2, I want to say. So this is like Jalen Hurts is kind of like, all right, he's just taking over. He didn't look good. Like he looked pretty bad. Jimmy looked terrible in that game. But the Niners ended up winning, and they probably shouldn't have won that game. Like they just kind of won ugly and it worked out. But the Eagles kept missing opportunities, and their offense looked horrible. They had a couple deep shots, like they just could not turn it into any points. And they kept the Niners around all game, and the Niners ended up winning at the end and kind of ran out the clock a little bit. But dude, like this is a different team. That's the thing. People don't realize that. Like they have added so much. You go and you trade for CJ Garner Johnson, right? You draft Jordan Davis. You draft Nakobe Dean. You trade for AJ Brown. Like you get guys back healthy. Like Miles Sanders, I mean, he was kind of banged up all last year. I don't know if they got Javon Hargrave this year too, and Kaiser White. Like this is a completely different squad. And it's like not in a bad way at all. It's like, that's a big positive. That's a really good thing. Like,
and
look
Hurts
at that.
looks better.
And Jalen Hurts looks significantly better. Dude, you bring up that schedule. I think that you should expect them to be the 1 seed in the NFC. And that sounds ridiculous. Go like in week 2 or whatever. That is a terrible schedule. You mentioned that the Giants are better and like the Cowboys will have Dak back for one of those games. After like the first couple weeks, just seeing like, okay, because I was thinking like, because I had like, I don't want to say I had big question marks, but I was wondering like, is this a real contender? Because they easily could be like Super Bowl contenders, super legit. They are, dude. They are nasty, man. So I'm pumped. I think that this will be a fun team to watch. I mean, maybe it won't be a fun team to watch because they're playing such terrible opponents. Like maybe we'll be like, oh yeah, the Packers game, whatever it is.
The Eagles won by 24 again.
Yeah, no, dude. But like as a Niners fan, like last year we like if the Niners would have played the Eagles in the playoffs, you'd been like, hell yeah, dude, you want to play the Eagles? They're not good. Like and then the Bucks went and they completely routed them. This year, I don't look at that matchup the same. I think that matchup's significantly more difficult. Like this is a team that probably has top 3 O-line and D-line. That spells trouble. And it's not like, oh, they don't have playmakers. They have this dude, AJ Brown. Ever heard of him? He can take 5 yards. He can take a 5-10 yard slant and he'll just run over your safety, stiff arm another guy, and take to the crib, and that'll be on with two busted knees that need surgery. Like he's insane. The big thing is he going to be healthy? And that's of course what is with every single team. If they're not healthy, it's not going to work. But right now, their roster is absolutely incredible. They're going to be very, very good this year.
Yeah, it's scary. I think for a lot of these teams, it's scary for a lot of Cowboy fans because it's going to be rough. I think this is a better team than the team that won the Super Bowl. Like I think easily better. And I know that there's a lot of, differences in that roster, but at the same time, they're more explosive on offense and they have more playmakers on defense. And I think they have better coaching. The coaching is arguable, but I think that it's better. So I think this is a true contender. This is a team where, again, Matt and I had questions coming into the year, and it was like, this is a great roster, but sometimes we see quarterbacks with great rosters and, they have the accuracy concerns that, maybe not accuracy, but consistency concerns of Jalen Hurts. And it's like, wow, through 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts looks great.
I would say this is the thing I had question marks about Jalen Hurts. Can they be explosive enough?
Yeah.
Because he had not been explosive. And it's like, as simple as, yeah, you had AJ Brown that he's that explosive because he doesn't need to be. And like the Quez Watkins play, like, dude, you weren't seeing guys like that open and busted coverage that much last year. Like
it really was. Rager was the one running deep.
Well, no, it's because there's nobody for the defense to really focus on. Like you can just play like very like conservative and sound, and you're probably not going to allow many points if you're a good defense. Like that's not going to be the case this year. Your number one corner is going to be in hell, dude. It's going to be horrible. Like it's going to be so hard for him. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they continue to look like. And I mean, all of a sudden the Eagles are going to feel a lot more confident about Jalen Hurts. It's something that we're probably going to see because he has the perfect wide receiver for his game.
So annoying as a Ravens fan. Oh, wow. Look, good receivers help your team. Shocker. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, for this daily segmented, NFL content. Live stream on Thursday. Super excited for that to, kind of have the return stream. But thank you, everybody. We'll see all of you again then.